Game 1 between the Las Vegas Anonymous Faces and the Seattle Shitbirds on ESPN, 461,000 viewers. The most dominant team in the league. They can't draw 500,000 viewers for a playoff game.
The WNBA just had its best season ever. Viewership was up, merch was flying off the shelves, and Caitlin Clark was the talk of the town. Fast forward a few months, and they're talking about bankruptcy. How does a league go from hero to zero that fast? Let's break it down. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Before Clark showed up, the WNBA was in trouble. Big trouble. They were losing $50 million a year. That's not pocket change. Viewership? Down. Fan engagement? Almost non-existent.
However, I hope Kat Engelbert is ready for disappointment because there's a hell of a lot more of it on the way. They tried to convince us that there are other players in the dump capable of drawing an audience.
It was looking pretty grim for women's basketball. Then boom! Caitlin Clark enters the chat. This rookie turned everything upside down. Suddenly, everyone wanted a piece of the WNBA. It was like Clark waved a magic wand and made the league interesting again. But here's where it gets crazy. Clark's impact? Bigger than anyone could have imagined. And what happened after she left? You won't believe it. Stick around, because this story is about to get wild. And wild it was. What if a single player could transform an entire league overnight? Caitlin Clark didn't just change the game. She rewrote the rulebook on what was possible in women's basketball.
More than likely, the WNBA, they won't see another Caitlin Clark in my lifetime. There were regular season games this season where Caitlin Clark drew more than 1.8 million viewers.
You know what's crazy? One player made ticket sales jump 265%. That's exactly what happened when Caitlin Clark joined the Indiana Fever. It's like she waved a magic wand and suddenly everyone wanted to watch WNBA games. Let's talk about those viewership numbers. Clark's playoff debut? 1.84 million viewers. That's insane. But you know what's even crazier? Her second playoff game hit 2.54 million. People were tuning in just to see what Clark would do next. But it wasn't just about Clark's team. The whole league was riding this wave. Attendance was up 48% across the board. That's not a small bump. That's a tidal wave of new fans flooding into arenas. And merchandise? Oh boy. Sales went through the roof. We're talking a 600% increase. Clark's jersey became the hottest item in the WNBA.
In Asia, despite being a third-time MVP, her jersey sales were 5th in the league even after we saw the jersey sales numbers. We didn't actually see the actual numbers, but we saw the top jersey sales in the WNBA.
You know that the Indiana Fever done put out a bunch of notes about attendance records being broken and all of this other stuff.
People who'd never watched a game in their life were rocking Clark gear. Imagine this. The Indiana Fever went from averaging just over 4,000 fans per game to over 17,000. That's more than quadruple. It's like Clark had some kind of gravitational pull, drawing fans into the arena. You want to know how big Clark's impact was? Her rivalry with Angel Reese of the Chicago Sky drew the biggest audience for a WNBA game in over 20 years. That's not just breaking records.
But the top topic of conversation will be the Rookie of the Year race between Indiana Fever's Caitlin Clark and the Chicago Sky's Angel Reese. You know Angel Reese is a walking double-double, and she's an Energizer Bunny, and her can't go unnoticed is the fact that these two young ladies are box office draws.
That's shattering them into a million pieces. Clark wasn't just a player. She was a phenomenon. Even people who couldn't tell a basketball from a soccer ball were tuning in to see her play. She was all over social media, all over the news. Clark wasn't just changing the game. She was changing the whole culture around women's basketball. The WNBA commissioner said it himself. Clark brought attention the league had never seen before. She wasn't just changing the game, she was changing the whole league. It was like Clark had this magic touch, turning everything she touched into gold.
Maybe if they had 10 Caitlin Clark spread throughout the league, maybe it would be watchable then. If you're one of the dozens of fans in the WNBA, it is only going to get worse from here.
Clark's magic seemed unstoppable. Then, in an instant, everything changed. The packed arenas, empty. Those record-breaking ratings, cut in half. How did the WNBA go from riding high to fighting for survival so quickly? It's like someone flipped a switch. One day, Caitlin Clark was the talk of the town, breaking records left and right. The next, she was gone, and the WNBA was left scrambling. Remember those insane viewership numbers we talked about? Well, they took a nosedive. We're talking a 50% drop overnight. The first game of the Aces Liberty rematch, it only pulled in 929,000 viewers.
403,000. And it's not just the ratings that were in the pooper. Attendance was clogging the drain. Ratings for Game 1 have got to be disappointing for Kat Engelbert and the WNBA front office.
That's a far cry from the millions who tuned in to watch Clark work her magic. When Clark left, it wasn't just a player leaving. It was like the air got sucked out of the entire league. Those arenas that were packed to the brim, now they're struggling to fill seats. Teams that were riding high on the Clark wave suddenly found themselves in choppy waters. The financial fallout? It's not pretty. Teams started slashing player salaries left and right. They had to. Without Clark bringing in the big bucks, something had to give. And you know it's bad when people start comparing WNBA player salaries to high school gym teachers. Let's talk about attendance for a second. Remember how the whole league saw a 48% boost when Clark was playing? Well, that boost vanished faster than a Clark three-pointer. Teams that were selling out games are now looking at rows of empty seats. And merchandise? That 600% increase we saw? Gone. Poof. Just like that. Clark jerseys were flying off the shelves one day, and the next, they were collecting dust. The WNBA commissioner called Clark the glue and foundation of the league. Now, without her, that foundation is cracking. The league that was flying high just months ago, now they're in a desperate scramble just to stay afloat. It's not just about the money, though. Clark brought in a whole new audience. People who'd never watched a WNBA game before were suddenly tuning in every week. Now, those casual fans, they're nowhere to be found. The WNBA's future hangs in the balance, and every decision from here on out could make or break women's professional basketball. Let's be real. The WNBA without Caitlin Clark is like a burger without the patty. It just doesn't hit the same. Remember those packed arenas and record-breaking ratings? They're a distant memory now. The league that was flying high just months ago, now they're in a desperate scramble just to stay afloat. It's like someone hit the emergency brake on the WNBA hype train. But here's the thing. The WNBA isn't throwing in the towel just yet. They've got a game plan, and it's all about finding the next big star. You know, someone who can fill those Caitlin Clark-sized shoes. But it's not just about players. They need to keep those casual fans Clark brought in. Imagine this. The Indiana Fever, Clark's old team, saw their attendance skyrocket by 319% during her season. That's insane. But now, those numbers have taken a nosedive. It's like Clark was the Pied Piper of basketball, and when she left, she took all the fans with her. The WNBA's got to move fast. Every day without a new Clark is costing them big time. Players are already looking overseas for better pay. It's like a ticking time bomb, and the league's got to defuse it before it's too late. You know what's crazy? Clark didn't just bring fans to the games. She turned casual viewers into die-hard WNBA enthusiasts. Google searches for the league shot up by 300% during her time. That's not just breaking records. That's shattering them into a million pieces. But here's the million-dollar question. Can the WNBA keep that momentum going without Clark? It's like they've been given a taste of success, and now they've got to figure out how to whip up that recipe again, without their secret ingredient, The league's at a crossroads. They've tasted success. Now, they've got to figure out how to get it back, and keep it this time. It's not just about finding new stars. It's about changing the whole game. They need to make every match as exciting as a Clark showdown, even without her on the court. Caitlin Clark showed us what the WNBA could be. She wasn't just a player, she was a game changer. Her games averaged 1.2 million viewers. That's 3 times more than games without her. It's like she flipped a switch and suddenly everyone was watching. But here's the thing. Clark's impact goes beyond her time on the court. She brought in new fans, created buzz, and showed the world how exciting women's basketball can be. Now it's up to the WNBA to keep that momentum going. The league's got a challenge ahead. They need to find new stars, create exciting storylines, and keep those new fans engaged. It's not just about replacing Clark. It's about building on what she started. The real question isn't if the WNBA can survive without Caitlin Clark. It's whether they can take what she started and turn it into something even bigger.